Hello chess friends and welcome back to your Zart of Chess channel and welcome back to our little computer chess world with another stunner, with another beautiful gameplay by the simply best chess engine in the world by Stockfish 18. Today we see the big fish battling it out in really one of my favorite Sicilians in the so-called Sveshnikov, in the Lasker-Pelikan Sicilian. In my opinion, really a sharp opening, and this game will be also sharp because today we see the fish finally playing with the black pieces. We have covered a couple of games where Stockfish demolished his opponents with the white pieces, but now it's time to see some good defenses. In my opinion, the Lasker-Pelikan, the Sveshnikov Sicilian, is really one of the best approaches against e4. So let's see now what happened with the white pieces. Stockfish opponent was Ginkgo, and Ginkgo opened with the move e4. So the fish response was c5. Now the Sicilian knight to f3, knight to c6. After d4 we have now the open Sicilian, and after a couple of trades of pawns here in the center of the board, now comes the move knight to f6, hitting now the pawn on e4. The Ginkgo protects it, and now comes this Lasker-Pelikan idea to simply kick away the knight from the centralized square, from the d4 square, with the move e5. And okay, this gives obviously black a tempo, but we have discussed it after the potential knight from d to b5 that Ginkgo played. There is now this problem for black here. There are a couple of positional problems. We have now this backward pawn on d7 and also the weak square on d5. But first of all, Stockfish solves one problem, pushes now the pawn to d6, and in one particular moment we want to play, of course, a6, finally kick away this knight from this very active square. Now comes knight to d5. This move order, this specific line, there are still different opportunities. You can play bishop to g5 is an option, has been played many times in chess history, but this specific knight to d5 move, which was actually very common idea by Fabiano Caruana in his world champion match against Magnus Carlsen back in 2018. So for instance, this line has been played, let me check it out, five times in their World Chess Championship match. So really an interesting line where you can obviously now take the knight, and you have to, I would say, because you get pinned in one particular moment. So basically it forces now a reaction here by black. After knight takes d5 that here Stockfish played, we have now the move e takes d5, knight to b8. Seems a little bit strange that you're giving up now here white such an activity, and you retreat now with the knight to b8 really on the starting score, on the passive score. But there are now a couple of good positional options that black is here in this particular position. So the first thing that I would say when we play with the black pieces is that we have here a 4 versus 3 pawn majority. So we have advantage here, at least on the king side. So we're trying to let his pawns roll. We'll try to push the pawn somehow on this side of the board. And one specific defensive idea, because you have to play some kind of a defensive idea on the queen side, because white is storming now on this side of the board, is to create some kind of a blockades here with potential moves like a5, knight to d7, and knight to c5, b6. You want to have here some kind of a static position. You are trying basically not allow to your opponent to push the pawns here on this side of the board. So really interesting game already. And in this particular moment, after knight to b8 here, a4 by Ginkgo, which is a clear idea. There are of course threats even to push this pawn further, but Ginkgo is not waiting here for a second. He's simply attacking immediately the position. Bishop to e7, bishop to e2, knight to d7, castling, and now for castling, now comes also a very interesting move here by Ginkgo, bishop to d2. The idea about this move bishop to d2 is to maybe in some lines to reroute the bishop to c3 and then push the pawn on f4, or with the move c3 b4 to support the potential attack on the queen side. Obviously, as we said, white is trying to push the pawns here, and the bishop is now a good piece on this side of the board. The issue, for instance, if you try bishop to e3, which is a more active move obviously for white, and it attacks the pawn on a7, this is not so dangerous to handle for black. You can simply kick away the knight. If the knight comes here, then there's this beautiful defensive resource. That's why the move bishop to d2 is more accurate, because in this potential positional trades of pieces that black could try, because black's dark square bishop is a little bit blocked by its own pawn. So in many lines, you'll see now this idea also here by Stockfish, is that you're trying to get rid of your bad piece against your opponent's very, very powerful piece. And now in potential line, maybe bishop to g5, queen to g5, knight takes c8, rook takes c8. Nothing lost, of course, for white here, but it's an unpleasant game now where wherever you put your bishop to f2, up to f3 or to c4, it's always blocked by its own pawn. On the other hand, black will eventually find probably good scores with the knight to c5, maybe then knight to e4, f5, f4 here is a beautiful attacking possibility. So this is not the line that I think white wants to get. So that's why bishop to d2 keeps a more flexible opportunity here for white, maybe later if bishop to g5 happens to maybe reroute the bishop here to c3 and keep the dark square bishops on the board, because black has really a tough time where to go with the dark square bishop. And the other issues are also that it's always stuck a little bit to the defense here to the d6 pawn. So that's why bishop to d2, I think, really a nice thematic move in this particular position. So now Stockfish kicks away the knight. a6, we have now knight to a3, and now a5. This specific move order I've seen also a couple of times in this opening. We have mentioned already what, for instance, black would love to get here in this particular position is maybe to get some kind of a fixed position. For instance, if you make a positional mistake like c4 here, then with knight to c5, notice that black has now really a nice grip on dark squares. Again, the same idea would be applied probably with bishop to g5 or maybe even f5, f4, e4. But in this particular case, black should be much better, because there is simply no option anymore for white to attack the position. With c3 and b4, you have to prepare to kick away the knight. So that's why careful when you play also here this position with the white pieces. c4 seems tempting because you want to gain space, but then there is the problem that you never be able really to attack the b4 square in a good way. So that's why after a5 here knight to b5 again by Ginko. Now comes this idea knight to c5 and now c3 with the idea to push the pawn finally to b4 and kick away the knight from this very active square. Bishop to d7. Now comes this idea. Stockfish gets the knight here on e4 and now bishop to e1. Still, Ginko wants to keep now the bishop here on the board. It's not giving up the bishop so far for a knight, which is a good decision, but the knight is a little bit passive now, obviously, on the square e1. We have a takes b4, c takes b4, rook to c8, and now a5. You may think that queen to d3 would be maybe an active approach to kick away this knight, but you're running into this stuff. f5, look at this. If you start to push the pawns, then maybe knight to g5, f4 takes, and then when this bishop finally comes into the game, this is really an unpleasant position. So black has to be also careful. White has to be also careful how to defend this pawn storm, this 4 versus 3 situation with pawns that we have discussed in the beginning of the game. Now it is not easy to defend. For instance, there are some deflection ideas to kick away the rook. For instance, I've analyzed just one line at home where you could get this kind of stuff where basically vulnerable on dark squares. But the main issue is, I think, that you cannot hold the blockade here with your rook, because when this bishop is coming into the game, even bishop to e5, f4 in some lines is possible. So really this could be also an unpleasant game for white. So that's why queen to d3 seems tempting, but you're getting your queen a little bit exposed. So that's why a5 here by Ginko. Ginko is not waiting any second anymore, is simply continuing its own plan with this 2 versus 1 pawn majority on the queen side. Stockfish continues now with this progressive plan that we have discussed. Bishop to g5. The bishop move, this bishop move is not allowing here white to push the pawn to f3, because you risk this kind of stuff. Look at this, bishop to b5, the bishop gets deflected, and then in some lines when the bishop is centralized, still I would say it's a pretty equalish game. But suddenly the bad bishop of blacks, the dark square bishop, is suddenly not a bad piece anymore. It's really now a nice piece. Black is holding so far this position on this side of the board. In one moment, I think the preparation would be g6, f5 to simply continue the powerful attack on this side of the board. So That's why bishop to g5, again, a very nice positional idea here by Stockfish, and still this knight is protecting this pawn on d6, so now the bishop can play a little bit more freely. So queen to d3. Now finally Ginko goes for the attack against the knight. We have bishop to f5. If you try, for instance, f5 here, this wouldn't be good because there is now really an interesting thematic idea that white will try, and white will try it also in a different line. But there is now this beautiful idea of knight to a7, and this will be now the main attacking motif here. Knight to a7, you have to step back with the rook, and now there is this problem of knight to c6. This is the mean plan that white is preparing here. For instance, in this line that wasn't playing the game, but I wanted to show how dangerous this can really be, because if you take, for instance, bishop to c6, then queen to c4 with the check and an attack against the bishop, it's winning the game for white. So that's why in this moment, after queen to d3, Stockfish noticed the possibility of knight to a7, knight to c6. That's why Stockfish played with the move bishop to f5. And now again, bishop to this f3 idea is simply not working because the queen is misplaced, and now there are ideas of knight to g3, an attack against the queen. The bishop is protected, and now you grab the rook, and I think it's fair to say it's game over here for white, at least in top AI level. So after bishop to f5, knight to a7 comes anyway here by Ginko. We have rook to a8, and now again this beautiful, interesting idea, knight to c6. And when you see now the evaluation bar, it is an equalish position. So Stockfish got challenged here by its opponent in really cool way, in really an attractive attacking way, and Stockfish simply grabbed the piece here. B takes c6, d takes c6, but now there is no threat of, we saw previously, queen to c4 was a huge threat. Now 3 connected pass pawns are rolling here, are attacking here the queen side, and if you make a tiny little inaccuracy here with black, I think you're getting destroyed. So it was a fair decision here by Ginko. It was a powerful plan. Let's see now how Stockfish is playing here a defensive role. How can Stockfish defend this pawn sword on the queen side? Stockfish first of all plays the most active move. Stockfish likes simply to activate its pieces as much as it can. So here after bishop to f4, again f3 is not working. We saw knight to g3 with the same plan. If you try g3 here to kick away this bishop, then it's again knight to g3. For instance, if you try b5, then there's again knight to g3. You have to now step back. If you pick up here this one, bishop to f1 is maybe here slightly better, or maybe even equalish positions. You see again the evolution, but now e4 unclear. b6, d5, I've analyzed this line, bishop to e5, rook to a2, rook to b8, c7, and maybe here b7, and then queen to c7 would probably solve now all of the position problems, but this is still a crazy position. So b5, my Stockfish engine suggests that white should continue here, allowing basically knight to g3, but to keep this flow on the queen side and maybe holding somehow this position. So, but after queen to f4 here, Ginko tried queen to d1, which gives here finally maybe Stockfish a slight edge. Now you see the evaluation bar is jumping in black's favor. Stockfish is not liking this move. Stockfish continues now with its own central breakthrough with the move d5. Here we have g3, kicking away the bishop, but now bishop to g5, again placing the piece on the most active square. Now queen b5, finally here by Ginko, we have queen to d6, and now queen to a4, where now the queen is very active. The main plan is still b6, then the queen is protecting still this pawn, and with this support of these two bishops, again black has to face many problems here. So queen to a4, Stockfish continues with bishop to d8, good move, stopping somehow the pawn chain for a little bit, because b6 will be met obviously with bishop takes b6, and the game is over. So white cannot lose pawns here. If white loses only one pawn, I would dare to say it's game over. So white has to keep this 3-3 mobile pawns on this queen side. So after bishop to d8, bishop to b4, kicking away the queen, queen to f6, beautiful counterattack here by Stockfish, because If you take now with the bishop, the rook here on f8, there is a beautiful Zwischenzug, intermediate attack. Now the queen is hanging. If you step back, the bishop is hanging. Knight takes e2, and now you finally grab the piece. Okay, maybe you lose this one, but now 3 minor pieces for the rook is simply not working here. And also now, as we said, if you lose one pawn in this specific position, you will probably lose the game. I've analyzed now this line a little bit longer. Look at this. In this scenario, black doesn't have to even react here for the threats on the d file. Look at this, queen to d8, queen takes d8. It seems so that something went wrong, but for instance, if you step back, if you maybe, I don't know, sorry, let's go back here. Let's go back to this position with bishop to f8. As we said, this is the line. There is now this cool checkmate pattern. For instance, if you step back with your rook somewhere, maybe here, you're trying to hold the position, there is the problem of bishop to f3. So it's also something worth to mention here in this specific position, because white has still this light square problems in front of the king. So very, very tricky line. So cool counterplay here by the fish. Queen to f6 with the idea, if you take, to play knight to c3. Really wild stuff. So that's why Ginko tried bishop to queen to d1. We have now finally rook to e8, queen takes d5. Stockfish loses now pawn. It seems that something is wrong here for black, but now a beautiful plan here by the fish. Knight to g5 with the idea to play bishop to e4, and then knight to f3 would be very, very dangerous. So that's why rook to a3. Ginko is trying to hold somehow the f3 square. Stockfish continues now with bishop to c7, at least for a while, stopping now the attack, because you could maybe try b6 here. But bishop to e4, first of all, attack against the queen. You're maybe trying to attack the piece. Now we pick up this one. You pick up maybe this one, but now, again, with the same pattern, knight to h3. Beautiful checkmate. So this pattern I'm showing you because it is one of the main attacking themes that black can have here, which basically stops also white's attacks on the queen side. You see, white has always the problem of a checkmate threat. Even if you try, instead of b6, it's here that the line that we have discussed, if you try queen to d2, maybe you hold the position, there is still knight to h3, very dangerous check, king to h1, and now you just start to push the pawns here. If you try now maybe b6, then there is the problem of queen to c6. If you try to cover, then this bishop will cover this diagonal. So again, this is not working here for white. So after h5, I don't know, I've analyzed this line, queen to e3. You're trying to hold still the f3 square, but then this rook is coming into the game. Maybe you're trying to get the bishop. Look at this, there is even this kind of a resource, knight to f4. If you take, for instance, g takes f4, e takes f4, and look at this bishop is hanging. There's the problem still of this check. Again, game over here for white, I would say. So very, very unpleasant position, but maybe queen to d2 was probably here the best continuation with this idea, knight to h3, maybe holding the position somehow. But instead of queen to d2, Ginko tried queen to c4, which is now a mistake that's here suggested by my Stockfish engine at home. Queen to c4 leads now into a very, very interesting line, because after knight to h3, still the same check. Now comes, you see, an extra tempo against the queen. That's why queen to c4 is not good. Queen to c5 has to be now played, and now rook from a to d8 with the threat of bishop to d5. So that's why rook to f3. If you try, for instance, bishop to f3 here to cover somehow, this is not working, because after e4, you're trying maybe to take, but then this resource, you have to now step back. If you try something like this, then we pick up this one, takes, and now the rook is also hanging. If you try f3 instead of rook to f3, and we saw bishop to f3 still not working, then there's still e4, you take, but now queen to b2, an attack against the rook and the bishop. And if you try bishop to c4, there's still this resource. So bishop to d6, always a dirty threat. I've analyzed a little bit the game longer. Look at this, we takes, and now this one is taken. You can take out this one, but once this one is taken, there's simply too much lost material here for for white. White still has these 3 connected pass pawns, but you see in any of these lines, white is not managing to start to push them. So Stockfish played here really actively in order to stop white's progress on this side of the board. So let's go back. After rook from a to d8, we have discussed f3, bishop to f3, not working, so that's why here Ginko played at least some kind of an attack, at least some kind of a threat. Now the queen has to step back. Queen to h6, b6. Finally now in move 36, finally this pawn is coming into the game, but again beautiful counterattack here by Stockfish. Ginko took now this one. We have now queen to h5. C takes d8 is again not working because you saw the pattern. Now we play a beautiful queen sacrifice, and now it's again a checkmate. So that's why for queen to h5, we have now queen to e3, and now finally rook to c8. And this is a very important lesson, I think, in defensive play here by Stockfish. Let's go back to this moment when the pawns are rolling. What you're trying to basically do is to maybe get the position. I just wanted to show maybe when the pawn chain is stopped. For instance, if the pawn chain is stopped, so it's immobile again, or if it's split, like in this continuation, b takes c7, you see now the pawns are not connected anymore. Basically, they are becoming weaknesses here, and now it's not so easy anymore to make anything. In the beginning, there were 3 connected pass pawns. Now they're stretched, they're vulnerable to a white's attack, so this is not working. So here, Stockfish, as we said, played this queen to h5. Again, I'm repeating, you cannot take because of queen takes f3. So after queen to e3, rook to c8, rook to c1, and now queen to g4, playing now active with the queen. The rook is pinned here. Bishop to d2. Stockfish plays now simple rook takes c7. The rook comes active into the game, and now a nice centralizing move by the queen. a6, we have now g5. This is a brilliant move. This is now the only, I would say, good move here for the fish. Every other move leads basically into an almost drawish position. So g5 with the threat of g4. So that's why bishop to f1. Now comes g4 anyway, and now bishop takes f3. And now what should you do? You could maybe try here this idea: queen takes f3, but then we take out the queen, and after a couple more moves, the pawns are falling here. Maybe you have some tactical issues, but once you play h6, there is simply no good check here by the queen that's possible. Once you also take out this one, it will become an endgame where probably we'll have 2 rooks against a rook and a bishop, and still with the same pawns. But there is also the problem of the potential back rank checkmate, so obviously this not working. So after bishop to f3, that's why bishop to g2. Stockfish grabs now finally this very annoying pawn on c6. Bishop takes f3, rook takes c5, and now bishop to e4. Here Ginko hoped to do something at least with the bishop pair, but you see the evaluation bar is obviously in black's favor. Too much Ginko loss here. As I said, maybe in some specific positions you could maybe somehow attack black's king, but you have to always also worry this kind of stuff, this kind of checks. If, for instance, the queen comes also on the back rank, devastating position to handle here for Ginko. So queen takes a6, Stockfish grabs now finally this pawn. We have now check, but nothing spectacular. No more good checks are possible here by Ginko. So that's why king to g1, rook to c4. We have now new check, and now Stockfish simply goes with this rook, is hoping to finally cover also here the g5. So Ginko took another pawn, but now rook takes g6. If you take h takes g6, leads again maybe into slightly complicated position, but only in human level, I would say. When Stockfish is playing this kind of position, you are maybe vulnerable a little bit on dark squares, but it is defendable, and white is obviously also vulnerable to the attacks on light squares. So black is up the exchange. So again, completely winning endgame here for black. So after rook to g6, Ginko tried to hold the position. Stockfish centralizes the queen, goes now finally active with the rook. We have now a new attack. We have now queen to e6. This was a tiny little trap sort of by Stockfish. If you take out now this one, there is this in-between check, and now we can finally grab the queen. So again, it would be game over. So that's why for queen to e6, queen to h5, now a new check. Stockfish improves now the position of the king, attacks now the bishop here, bishop drops back, attacks now simply another piece, and now Stockfish decided to give up now the rook for the exchange, going into completely cleared position after queen to e3, f takes e3. Now new check by the fish, new check, new check. Here Ginko had to cover, and now queen to c3, queen to f3, h6, h4 here by Stockfish, by Ginko, rook to b6, queen to g4, and after king to f8, queen to f5, and queen takes e3. In this particular position, Ginko resigns. So too much lost here. Again, you have a couple of checks, but one more check, and now we can play this one. So slowly but surely, I think black is winning the game here. So great stuff. Great attack here by Stockfish. Great defensive play then later. In my opinion, very thematic game in a crazy attack here by Ginko. But how Stockfish is playing counter attacks, how it always finds bothering moves, it always bothers you. You cannot make your plan work because you're always occupied with simple threats by Stockfish. So amazing stuff. In my opinion, really one of the best games here in the Lasker-Pelikan Sicilian that I've seen in my life. So great game. If you want to see some other cool Stockfish games, check out our Come to Chess Games Play by Computer series. Here's the link to the playlist. And if you want to practice maybe more this Lasker-Pelikan Sicilian, we have covered many great games also by Stockfish, also many games with the black pieces. Check out our playlist of this beautiful opening. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos. And what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.